For Veldora, the day was turning into a disaster. In an empty field of grass, the city was prepared for the Imperial invasion, safely isolated in the labyrinth. This made the beautiful figure descending from the sky even more striking. Despite himself, Veldora muttered, "Ah, my sister," his voice lacking its usual strength. Charis stammered, Is it possible that this is Lady Velgrynd, the sister I have heard rumors about?" Veldora confirmed, "Indeed, you are correct. She is Velgrynd, the Flame Dragon, one of the all-powerful true dragons. And my sister, yes." The control center sprang into action. An emergency alarm blared throughout the labyrinth, urging everyone to exercise maximum vigilance. Ramirez, already in a panic, was not helpful in this situation, though she was a valuable resource in a scientific laboratory. She had powerful allies like trainee sisters and the dryads who maintained order. Ramirez, the labyrinth's overall supervisor, had declined a position in the 10 dungeon marvels. Unfortunately, many marvels were in evolutionary sleep. Beretta, their former leader, was tasked with guarding Ramirez. Beretta suggested intercepting Velgrynd in the labyrinth, while Trainee and others monitored the situation. Of the 10 dungeon marvels, only the 4 Dragon Lords were currently awake. Gadora had already been sent with the Demon Colossus to assist the armed nation of Dwargon. Though underprepared for Velgrynd, Beretta believed utilizing the labyrinth's perfect fortress could buy time. Veldora agreed, though his expression betrayed his fear. "I don't know what she's here for, but if she came alone, she deserves nothing but my laughter. With all of us together, we have nothing to fear. Qua ha ha ha." Despite his confident grin, it was clear Veldora was scared. Just a couple of days ago, Veldora had been in hard combat with Velzard, his elder sister. Now, with that incident fresh in his mind, he faced Velgrynd, his second eldest sister, who was staging an invasion of Rimuru, the capital of the Jura Tempest Federation, all by herself. This was simply outrageous to Veldora, and his mind raced, desperately trying to find a way out of the situation. Desperate for a solution, Veldora quickly agreed to Beretta's proposal. But then, Velgrind's voice echoed directly into his mind, calling for him to come out. Her eyes on the display screen seemed to bore right into Veldora. Jairus was bewildered by Veldora's reluctance, while Ramirez, trying to save herself, was silenced by Veldora. The labyrinth staff decided to hold their ground despite the impending threat. Velgrynd issued a warning, and everyone present understood that the situation was rapidly changing. Veldora knew his sister was about to make a move, but reassured himself that the labyrinth's incredible structure, capable of shutting off dimensions, would keep them safe. As long as they remained inside, Velgrynd wouldn't be able to reach them. Veldora attempted to calm Ramirez, but his words trailed off as he saw Velgrynd produce a pure crimson spear. Alarmed, Veldora ordered everyone to brace for impact. Moments later, a severe shockwave rocked the labyrinth, causing significant damage down to floor 50. The myth of the labyrinth's purported safety was shattered. As Veldora panicked over what to do next, he received a thought communication from Rimuru. The cheerful greeting initially annoyed Veldora, but the subsequent concern in Rimuru's voice made him realize the gravity of the situation. Rimuru was equally strained, which meant he couldn't be relied upon immediately. With this realization, Veldora's false hope drained away. He understood that he had no choice but to confront Velgrynd himself to prevent her from laying waste to the labyrinth. Despite his lack of evidence, Veldora believed he might stand a chance, thanks to Rimuru's training. Rimuru's support bolstered Veldora's confidence. Rimuru assured him that he would take full responsibility for any fallout, implying he expected Veldora to succeed. Encouraged, Veldora felt a sense of calm and resolve. Declaring his intention to face Velgrynd, Veldora's relaxed demeanor shocked Ramirez and Beretta. He explained that stalling for time in the labyrinth wouldn't work, and that confronting his sister directly was the best option to minimize further damage. Knowing that as long as Rimuru was alive, Veldora was effectively immortal, Veldora decided that to prevent any further sacrifice, his family's only option was to leave the labyrinth. When one of his allies offered to join him, Veldora refused, acknowledging their strength but recognizing that their presence would be more of a hindrance in this situation. Veldora's fear had been replaced by a gallant resolve, vastly different from his earlier display of anxiety. Expressing concern, his companions asked if he would be okay. Veldora admitted he wasn't entirely confident, recalling the torment his sisters had put him through. However, he affirmed that encountering Rimuru had made him stronger and wiser. With renewed determination, he laughed heartily, regaining his usual confident tone. Reassuring his friends to not worry, and to watch as he heroically took on the challenge, Veldora left the labyrinth, ready to confront Velgrynd. Reflecting on his recent battle with Velzard, Veldora marveled at how powerful his older sister had become. Her defense was far more impenetrable than before, something the old Veldora would have missed. His encounters with Rimuru had led to tremendous growth, epitomized by acquiring an ultimate skill. While sealed inside Rimuru's stomach, Veldora had observed and learned a great deal, understanding that power is only meaningful when used wisely. His vast store of magicule energy made him one of the strongest true dragons, surpassing his sisters. But he recognized this as naive. Veldora now knew that strength alone wasn't enough. Opponents like Hinata, Granville, and the Demon Lord Luminous relied on cunning and strategy to win. This realization had transformed him. During combat with Velzard, he could counterattack instead of just enduring blows. Despite Velzard being a natural enemy with her Eternal World skill, which nullified his attacks, Veldora found he could hold his own, surprising even himself. Velzard, who had learned to control her immense power, was surprisingly honest in acknowledging Veldora's growth. She praised his newfound strategic thinking and admitted he was no longer the spoiled child she remembered. Despite the disturbing nature of some of Velzard's words, the underlying praise for Veldora made him happy. It was a significant shift from his previous fear of her, although he still couldn't defeat her. Velzard and Velgrynd were evenly matched in ability, and Veldora had always struggled with both. He didn't want to fight them, but he had no choice now. Recognizing Velgrynd's formidable power, Veldora knew he couldn't unleash an attack that spanned multiple labyrinth floors like she could. Even with all his magicules, he couldn't match her destructive power in a single blow. He understood that mastering his ultimate skill, Faust, Lord of Investigation, was key to holding his own against Velgrynd. Although he outclassed Velgrynd in magicule count, it would be his strategic use of Faust that would determine the outcome. The hope that his power could rival hers helped him overcome the trauma of their encounter. While Velzard's skills made her a difficult opponent, Velgrynd posed a different challenge. Rimuru had helped Veldora acquire Faust, which had proven effective even against Velzard. With this skill, Veldora believed he could face Velgrynd without fear. With renewed determination and a desire to test his newfound power, Veldora appeared in front of Velgrynd, ready to confront her. Qua ha 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 ha! Nobody's doomed me to defeat yet, have they? The siblings faced each other in mid-air, both in human form, their stillness a natural state for true dragons. Velgrynd, seemingly pleased, asked if Veldora had decided to cooperate after understanding her warning. Veldora, however, firmly refused, asserting he was not a tool for her use and would not be involved in her quarrels. Velgrynd tried to persuade him, offering to help him use his powers more effectively, but Veldora remained resolute, declaring he had grown beyond senseless violence. Velgrynd, slightly annoyed, decided to test Veldora's growth through combat. She never intended to recruit him through mere words. Displaying her strength was meant to force his compliance, or failing that, rough him up enough for Ludora to take control. Her initial attack was swiftly parried by Veldora, surprising her with his newfound strength. She realized that Veldora had fully recovered from his 300 years of sealing and had improved significantly. His confidence and combat skills were no longer just bravado. Frustrated, Velgrynd intensified her attacks, launching a barrage of crimson flames. Despite the searing heat, Veldora withstood the onslaught, his evasive maneuvers accompanied by childlike exclamations of "Hot! Hot! Hot!" Although he fled at full speed, he remained relatively unharmed. Velgrynd, furious yet composed, acknowledged Veldora's unexpected strength. She realized that dominating him would be more challenging than anticipated. Her goal was to subdue him, making him a crucial pawn for Ludora once he defeated Guy. Veldora, meanwhile, was dismayed as Velgrynd's attack ruined the precious outfit gifted by Rimuru. Though unhurt, the damage to his cherished attire fueled his anger, replacing his ingrained fear of his sisters. This newfound rage empowered him to confront Velgrynd without hesitation. Declaring he would show no mercy, Veldora transformed into a majestic, jet-black dragon. Velgrynd, amused by his bravado, transformed into her crimson dragon form. The siblings, now in their true forms, prepared for an epic battle. As Rimuru prepared to enter the imperial capital, the dwarven king Gabil faced a desperate battlefield. In the distance, a figure of deadly beauty spread destruction wherever she went. Gabil questioned whether Legion magic could defend against such power, but Vaughn, his supreme military commander, dismissed the idea. True dragons, he explained, were beyond any reasonable defense. Vaughn had deployed the dwarven army in anticipation of Gabil's arrival. The soldiers, witnessing the Empire's composite division's destruction, remained steadfast despite their broken spirits. They knew there was nowhere safe to run and believed their deaths might ensure their family's survival a bit longer. King Gabil, revered by his troops, understood their emotions and was determined not to waste their lives, though he felt deep turmoil. Accepting that they couldn't win, Gabil considered surrender, but the Empire would never accept it. They had to demonstrate their value as allies rather than enemies. The only way to survive was to fight to the bitter end, hoping their sacrifices wouldn't be in vain. Gabil resolved that their only option was to challenge and defeat their sole enemy, Velgrynd. Vaughn, trying to lighten the mood, reminded Gabil of his responsibility as king. Gabil, acknowledging Vaughn's effort to ease his heartache, knew that strategy and tactics were meaningless against Velgrynd. They needed a way to survive, and Gabil dispelled his hesitation. As Rimuru prepared to enter the imperial capital, King Gabil faced a dire battlefield. Velgrynd, a figure of deadly beauty, wreaked havoc in the distance. Henrietta reported multiple presences behind Velgrynd, performing a ritual involving extreme magic that had annihilated an army of 60,000. This hinted at an evil plot, with Velgrynd at its center. Dolph suggested moving their forces, but Gabil knew the heavy strike division's lack of mobility would expose them to magic attacks. Their stout defenses were ineffective against Velgrynd. The only option was a desperate strike by the 500-strong Pegasus Knights. Vaughn agreed, recognizing that they couldn't afford to weaken their defenses further. Despite Dolph's formal objections to Vaughn's casual address of the king, they all knew that the best strategy was to remain agile and concentrated. Henrietta confirmed Lady Jane's plan to join the fight after persuading the elders. Their old camaraderie surfaced, united in their resolve to support Gabil. Gabil laughed, wondering what Jane would say about their plan. As if on cue, Jane teleported onto the scene, expressing her exasperation. Gabil, taken aback, realized she had likely overheard their discussion. Jane sneered at the uncomfortable-looking Gabil, shaking her head. Despite thinking Gabil had become a great king, she acknowledged that there was no other way to deal with a catastrophe-level threat like a true dragon. Human magic was ineffective against true dragons, and Velgrynd was harnessing magic on an immense scale, beyond human control. However, Jane had hopeful news. She had received a call that His Majesty Rimuru was sending reinforcements. This surprised Gabil, given the short time since he had contacted Rimuru. Jane reassured him that Rimuru's subjects were quick to act on his commands. Everyone present nodded, acknowledging the reliability of the reinforcements. Before they could reconsider their plans, the reinforcements had already arrived, ready to support them in their fight against the overwhelming threat posed by Velgrynd. Suddenly, a large distortion appeared in space, revealing a small group of elite forces encased in an enormous cocoon. This group consisted of 100 members of Gabil's team Hiryu and 300 from Gobwa's team Kurenai. Each member of this formidable squad was over A rank, making them as powerful as the Pegasus Knights. Their imposing weaponry drew significant attention. Gazelle noted the presence of the completed magic armor soldier, the Demon Colossus. Although he didn't expect it to defeat Velgrynd, its sheer majesty reassured his soldiers. Gazelle's advisors agreed that even with a larger supply of these weapons, they would still struggle against Velgrynd. As the group approached, led by Gabil, and including the three demonesses led by Testarossa, Gobwa, and Hakuro, Testarossa spoke first. She had diplomatic privileges and a wealth of experience, making her the ideal spokesperson. Gazelle expressed his gratitude for the reinforcements. Usually, customs and formalities would dictate that an intermediary speak on the king's behalf. However, given the urgency, all parties dispensed with decorum and engaged in a straightforward strategy meeting. Once everyone gathered in the command center, they quickly focused on their strategy. Testarossa recapped Rimuru's plans and proposed a strategy for their current situation. Gazelle considered the plan to strike the Emperor, while Vaughn was optimistic and Dolph pondered alternatives. With no better options, Testarossa pressed on. The plan was for Testarossa's group to handle Velgrynd, while everyone else would stop the ritual taking place behind her. Gazel agreed, recognizing the demons as the only ones capable of such a dangerous task. However, Jane questioned whether the primal demons could truly defeat Velgrynd, expressing her doubts given Velgrynd's overwhelming power. Testarossa admitted that defeating Velgrynd might not be possible, prompting Jane to suggest a defensive stance to stall for time. However, Carrera insisted that they couldn't leave Velgrynd unchecked, as she might interfere with Rimuru's efforts. Rimuru had ordered them to keep Velgrynd's focus on them, and Carrera felt compelled to comply. Hakuro, supporting Carrera's stance, emphasized the need for unity and action. Gazelle, understanding the urgency, quieted his advisors and agreed to follow Hakuro's lead. Dolph acknowledged the challenge of ending the ritual, highlighting the need for a unified approach. With all parties in agreement, they quickly finalized their plan. Provoking Velgrynd was like sticking your hand in a hornet's nest, yet Testarossa and her team pressed on undaunted. Ultima wondered if their intervention would delay the ritual, to which Testarossa responded uncertainly. Carrera doubted Velgrynd could maintain a gravity collapse while battling them, but Testarossa remained wary, confident in Velgrynd's abilities. Without hesitation, the demonesses approached Velgrynd, who noticed them and seemed delighted. Velgrynd casually offered them a place in her camp, promising they'd be well treated. The demonesses declined unanimously, each expressing their loyalty to Rimuru and eagerness to fight. Velgrynd laughed at their refusal, ready for a battle. She split into two identical forms, a sight familiar to Testarossa. Recalling her fight with Rain, Testarossa recognized this technique as more than just replication. It was akin to Rain's ubiquital mist. This ability allowed the user to create a replication that could regenerate at will, catching enemies off guard and offering significant tactical advantages. Velgrynd's parallel existence skill allowed her to create separate bodies at will, a power stronger than ubiquital mist. Testarossa, unaware of this, showed a hint of doubt. As they analyzed the situation, they treated it like a casual conversation, despite the battle being underway. Velgrynd, noticing Testarossa's intelligence, confirmed her parallel existence skill and expressed her intention to deal with them to prevent interference with the ritual. Testarossa, irritated, corrected Velgrynd on her name, emphasizing it was given by Rimuru. During their exchange, Testarossa attacked with a flaming whip, which Velgrynd dodged. Carrera, indignant at Velgrynd's disrespect towards Rimuru, unleashed her magic, Gravity Collapse. She concentrated its power, striking Velgrynd head-on. The black pillar connected from heaven to earth, trapping Velgrynd in a prison from which there was no escape. But Velgrynd, with a wry grin, remained unconcerned within her hypergravity cell. She shattered the jet-black column from the inside and jammed Carrera's magic, rendering her powerless. Despite this, Carrera enjoyed the challenge, brandishing a magic-generated blade imbued with her demonic aura. Testarossa explained that a personally crafted technique, rather than a simple magic spell, could strike a true dragon. She used a magically generated flame whip imbued with a freezing flame of ivory, a contradiction she invented. Ultima, inspired, materialized two dark purple knives exuding an eerie aura. The Demonesses, initially focused on magic, had to adapt during their battle with Zegion, whose defenses nullified almost all spells. They discovered that only by putting their spiritual life forms and tenacious wills into their attacks could they inflict damage. This realization led them to create unique weapons. Despite Zegion's formidable defenses, Ultima's knives had managed to wound him, proving that the Demonesses' attacks were ultimate in nature. Carrera, inspired, sprinted forward, slashing at Velgrynd with her sword. Velgrynd parried with her feathered fan, a weapon enhanced by her magical energy to be as hard as diamond. Velgrynd was surprised by the Demonesses' readiness to abandon magic, but they saw it as a necessary sacrifice for victory. As Carrera's onslaught continued, Testarossa's whip struck Velgrynd, leaving a visible welt. Carrera praised Testarossa's hit, maintaining the vanguard position. However, Velgrynd's control led her to underestimate her opponents, making a grave mistake. Ultima's triumphant attack caused Velgrynd intense pain, and Testarossa and Carrera capitalized on her moment of confusion, striking repeatedly. Velgrynd fell to her knees, momentarily disoriented. The Demonesses celebrated their teamwork, but remained cautious, knowing the battle wasn't over. Velgrynd, hearing their distant voices, stood up and with incredible speed, grabbed Ultima by the neck and slammed her to the ground. Ultima groaned as Velgrynd stomped on her, only to leap away just before Carrera's sword slash could connect. Velgrynd, now safely out of range, pulled a knife from her side and cast it aside. Her clothes were torn, but her pale skin bore no wounds, showing that the barrage of attacks had little effect on her. Carrera muttered, "She really is a monster." Velgrynd replied lightly, admitting she hadn't felt off guard in years. She acknowledged that the Demonesses had surpassed expectations with their new names and physical bodies, which made them more formidable. Despite this, Velgrynd's sharp gaze ensured no movement went undetected, and the Demonesses knew they couldn't hope for another careless moment from her. Velgrynd respected their strength in battle, recognizing their teamwork as a potential threat even to her sister, Velzard. The last attack from Testarossa's team had ruined one of Velgrynd's separate bodies, and disabling Ultima's poisoned curse was a painstaking task even for her. Velgrynd disabled the damaged body and conjured a new one, undoing all the damage. This was the real trick behind parallel existence. However, there were restrictions, as each separate body occupied 10% of the user's maximum magicule count. Velgrynd could create a maximum of 10 bodies, but usually kept it to 3 or 4 to maintain her fighting ability. Each of Velgrynd's separate bodies had a limitation related to damage. A deactivated, undamaged body would return 10% of the user's magicules. However, a damaged body would return proportionally less, depending on the extent of the damage. This meant that even powerful strikes like Carrera's gravity collapse, while immense, barely impacted Velgrynd's magicule count. Velgrynd appeared invincible, but was not immortal. She could ignore most physical damage, yet her energy could be steadily drained. The probability of defeating her was small, but it existed. Velgrynd's psychological warfare, calling the Demonesses no threat, was a bluff, recognizing their potential. Realizing the Demonesses could be pivotal in her next battle against Velzard, Velgrynd attempted to solicit their help again. She offered them freedom in exchange for cooperation, but the Demonesses instantly rejected it. They were loyal to Rimuru and would not betray him. Testarossa, Ultima and Carrera expressed their resolve and unleashed a powerful barrage, destroying Velgrynd's separate body and draining her magicules further. With negotiations off, Velgrynd generated a new body and the rampage began. Gazel and his team decided to attack the area where Kigali was conducting the ritual, carefully bypassing the gravity-collapse-driven pillar of crimson raining blood from the sky. Approaching too close would catch them in the gravitational waves, and it was Dolph's duty to lead and keep watch. Testarossa and the other demons were engaged in combat with Velgrynd on the ground, but the crimson pillar persisted, sending a chill down Gazel's spine. Nevertheless, he shouted to his knights, instilling courage in them. Despite his own fear, Gazel's resolve as king and the reinforcements from his former trainee showed it was too early to despair. The three demonesses, with lesser magicule counts than Gazelle, boldly challenged an overwhelmingly powerful opponent. Gazelle vowed not to whine about his situation, inspired by their bravery. This resolve spread to his advisors and knights, and by the time they reached their destination, fear no longer registered with any of them. Their destination lay beyond the Crimson Pillar, in a wide-open meadow, spacious enough for a large army. The ground, stained with blood, marked the end of the composite division. In this vast area stood around 100 people, including Lieutenant Kondo in a distinct uniform. He was surrounded by footmen, Teare, and dozens of Yuki's former companions, along with nearly 50 Imperial Guardians, all protecting Kigali during her ritual. Also present were members of the Imperial Information Bureau, essentially the Empire's best forces assembled in one place. Gabil, situated on the outer edge of the Crimson Pillar, was immersed in the ritual, while Velgrynd watched over her. After creating a separate body on the other side of the pillar, Velgrynd returned to prevent the demonesses from interfering with the spell. Her main body's full attention was required for such a large-scale incantation, so she observed the impending battle from afar. As Gazelle and his team descended, Kondo greeted them nonchalantly, acknowledging Gazelle's legendary heroism. Gazelle, recognizing Kondo's skill, decided to handle him personally. He ordered Vaughn and the others to manage the rest of the opponents, ensuring they didn't interfere with his duel. Jane agreed, noting Kondo's formidable nature. Dolph issued orders for the Pegasus Knights, emphasizing the need to use their superior numbers to distract the enemy. With precise instructions, the team prepared for aerial combat, ready to face the Empire's elite forces. Gazel and his team approached their destination beyond the Crimson Pillar, a wide-open meadow stained with the blood of the Composite Division. They encountered about 100 people, including Lieutenant Kondo, Footman, Teare, Yuki's former companions, and nearly 50 Imperial Guardians, all protecting Kigali during her ritual. Members of the Imperial Information Bureau were also present, representing the Empire's best forces. Kigali, immersed in her ritual, was surrounded by the Crimson Pillar, with Velgrynd watching over her. Gazelle recognized the overwhelming presence of Velgrynd and the formidable nature of the opponents they faced. Despite the Pegasus Knight's strength, he knew they couldn't defeat Velgrynd in a direct confrontation. Dolph issued orders for the Pegasus Knights to use their aerial advantage to distract the enemy, hoping to buy time and keep Gazelle focused on his duel with Kondo. The Pegasus Knights, understanding the strategy, prepared for aerial combat. Their efforts were bolstered by the arrival of Gabil and his team, transporting the massive demon Colossus. Gadora, eager to join the battle, climbed into the Colossus, turning his attention to Kondo and Velgrynd. Gazel, determined and inspired by the demoness's bravery, engaged Kondo. The rest of the team, including Dolph and Jane, focused on distracting the enemy to support Gazelle. Gadora, focused on preventing Velgrynd from making any moves, directed the demon Colossus towards her. Meanwhile, Gabil flew up next to Dolph and confirmed their plan to engage anyone in the way, leaving the backup to Dolph. Team Hiryu, with their superior combat ability and excellent defenses, took charge. Each Dragon Ute was granted a full potion, ensuring they could survive anything that didn't kill them instantly. This allowed them to function effectively as shields. Gabil, confident and eager, charged towards one of Kondo's associates, leaving Dolph momentarily confused. Gobwa looked on in amazement at Gabil. Although her team was the last to arrive, given that they were the only land-based force, they still boasted impressive speed. They had positioned themselves behind the enemy as planned. Vobio, the black leopard Fang, remarked that the man Gabil was challenging didn't look formidable. Gobwa, however, emphasized the importance of properly evaluating the enemy, maintaining military formality despite her friendly history with Phobio. Amidst the tense battlefield, their exchange had an odd warmth. When Phobio asked about their next move, Gobwa switched to a serious tone, stating they needed to reduce obstacles and lighten Rimuru's burden, as survival was the key. She acknowledged that the operation was already a failure, but they had no choice but to continue. Their mission was to prevent Velgrynd from interfering and stop Kigali's ritual. Gobwa's resolve was firm, refusing to accept any casualties. Gobwa gave Phobio a wink. It had enough destructive force to stop him in his tracks. Phobio, despite his past painful experience with Footman and Teare, didn't harbor resentment. Instead, he viewed it as an opportunity for growth, reflecting his simple, cheerful approach to life as a beastman. With resolve, he promised Gobwa he'd make an effort not to die before joining the fray. Gobwa and her team watched as Phobio leaped into action, determined to settle scores and contribute to the battle. Meanwhile, the various confrontations on the battlefield intensified. Lieutenant Kondo faced off against Draksh, King Gazelle. Gabil targeted an Imperial intelligence officer. Vaughn and Henrietta engaged Footman and Teare. Phobio sought to confront his nemesis. Gobwa and her team planned their next move, ready to support where needed. Velgrynd, overseeing the battlefield, had her attention caught by Gadora in the Demon Colossus. Each confrontation added to the chaos and intensity of the battle, as allies and enemies clashed in a decisive and fierce conflict. On the battlefield, Gazel faced Kondo with a mind as calm as a passing breeze. He stood not as a king, but as a warrior and accomplished sword fighter. Kondo, following Gazel's instructions, drew his military sword and admired Gazel's stance sincerely. Gazel, recognizing Kondo's sincerity, responded with a snicker, acknowledging the beauty of Kondo's stance. The two warriors crossed swords silently a few times, understanding each other's abilities. Both noticed their similar stances, realizing it was no coincidence. Gazel had learned swordsmanship from Hakuro, following the Oboro, or Crestwater style, handed down from Hakuro's grandfather Byakuya Araki. Gazelle knew there were still secrets and techniques to discover in this style. Curious about Kondo's technique, Gazelle asked about his knowledge of the Oboro-style stance. Kondo, sharing the same curiosity, inquired about Gazelle's technique, acknowledging their similar fighting styles. They glared at each other, the tension palpable. Gazelle was the first to respond, questioning if Oboro was different from Crestwater. Kondo pondered for a moment, his expression unchanged. He had limited information, but was close to understanding the connection. Gazelle, growing impatient, pressed him for an answer. Kondo explained that their sword styles were likely from the same lineage, making their similar techniques no coincidence. Gazelle recalled his master Hakuro's teachings about Crestwater, passed down from Hakuro's grandfather, who was a visitor from another world. Unbeknownst to them, Byakuya Araki had a younger brother who introduced Oboro to Japan, blending sword style with mystical arts. Kondo, amused by their shared heritage, offered Gazelle a proposal. He suggested that as a fellow Oboro user, Gazel should join their side, promising to cease all acts of aggression against the Dwarven Kingdom. Kondo believed it was the rational choice to minimize damage. Gazel considered the offer, realizing it was a logical way to protect his people. However, he rejected the notion, viewing it as a conceited way of thinking. With renewed determination, Gazel focused solely on defeating Kondo, unleashing his Saint Level force. Despite Gazelle's formidable display, Kondo remained relaxed, mocking Gazelle's perceived lack of wisdom. The stage was set for a fierce battle between two saints, each ready to prove their superiority. Several minutes passed, and Kondo clearly had the upper hand in his duel with Gazelle. He effortlessly dispelled Gazelle's heroic aura by matching it with his own spiritual force. In pure swordsmanship, Kondo also excelled, countering Gazelle's Crestwater thundering heavens with his own techniques, Shippu Raiha and Shiden Totsu. Though they knew each other's techniques well, Gazelle's reaction times began to lag as Kondo demonstrated mastery of more techniques. Kondo, honest but not mocking, questioned how well Hakuro, a mere monster, understood the true nature of the blade. This comment infuriated Gazelle, who glared at Kondo, his expression fiercer than ever. Just then, Hakuro arrived on the scene, part of the rear guard as Gobwa's advisor. With a chuckle, he remarked on Gazelle's need for more training if such comments could disturb him on the battlefield. He suggested Gazelle cool off while he took over for a bit. Kondo recognized Hakuro's abilities instantly. The piercing clang of steel against steel echoed through the air as Kondo executed a classical Iaido move, and Hakuro caught it with his hidden sword. Hakuro's third eye, Heaven Gaze, was open on his forehead, an advanced skill allowing him to keep up with Kondo's swift sword drawing. Hakuro, acknowledging their shared lineage, challenged Kondo to see how well he understood the true meaning of the sword. Kondo, finding the situation intriguing, agreed to the duel. Thus, the intense battle between Kondo and Hakuro began, with Gazelle watching closely. Kondo liked his chances against Hakuro. Although he recognized Hakuro's abilities, Kondo believed no monster could truly understand the essence of a sword. The Oboro Shinmei-ryu style, designed to combat demons, should have been naturally repellent to monsters. This belief, rooted in common sense, led Kondo to underestimate Hakuro, a critical misjudgment. As they squared off, Kondo launched his attack with Baika Gokatotsu, a complex stabbing technique symbolizing a plum blossom. It targeted multiple vital points and was a closely guarded secret within his school. However, this move was a miscalculation against Hakuro. Hakuro countered with multi-layered Blossom Flash, his most secret technique. This continual flowing strike could slash the enemy 8 times in an instant. Although Kondo and Hakuro were equal in skill level, Kondo was physically more gifted. Hakuro's resolve was clear. If this skill failed, his defeat was inevitable. Kondo aimed to overwhelm Hakuro, who sought to deliver a fatal blow, leading to a clash of skills that left both off the mark. Hakuro's 8 slashes, like a multi-layered cherry blossom shedding its buds, were offset by Kondo's 5 plum petals. Despite this, Hakuro managed to graze Kondo's cheek. Kondo, recognizing Hakuro's superiority in technique with the Blossom Flash, admitted his mistake. However, Kondo still won the duel, as the difference in power was too great. Hakuro's arms were cut to gruesome ribbons, rendering them useless. Kondo expressed his respect for Hakuro, asking about his grandfather's name. Hakuro revealed his grandfather, Byakuya Araki, a swordsman without equal. Kondo acknowledged the connection to the head family of Oboro Shinmei-ryu and offered a silent prayer. Hakuro, sensing Kondo's respect, asked him to step aside. However, Kondo insisted he could not stop the war, emphasizing the importance of not taking half measures. Kondo was nonchalant in his reply, as Hakuro had expected. Despite his injuries, Hakuro remained calm, knowing his goal was to demonstrate his fighting techniques to Gazelle. By witnessing Hakuro's skills in action, Gazelle could understand and adopt them, improving his own chances in the fight. Hakuro's arms were gravely wounded, beyond what even a full potion could heal. The secret of battle will, involving permeating a target with one's own fighting spirit, meant Kondo's spirit had deeply damaged Hakuro. Healing required neutralizing this force with his own aura. Hakuro, unfazed, turned to Gazelle, asking if he had cooled down. Gazelle, impressed by Hakuro's techniques, affirmed. Hakuro, acknowledging the situation, left the rest to Gazelle. With a final nod, Hakuro stepped back, letting Gazelle face Kondo once more, his part in the battle seemingly concluded. Kondo and Gazelle faced each other once more, both now fully aware of each other's abilities. Kondo, reflecting on his previous shallowness, acknowledged it was time to get serious. Gazelle, determined to live up to his master's expectations, prepared to give his all. Gazelle was grateful for Hakuro's intervention, realizing his earlier defeat would have been certain. Kondo's secret Gokatotsu move, combined with his fighting spirit, was nearly impossible to defend against. This clash had taught Gazelle the true threat of battle will, one of its most powerful secret techniques. Gazelle, uplifted by the realization of his potential growth, decided to unleash his full power. Summoning the Earth Elemental Lord, he became fully unified, gaining immense energy reserves. Despite this surge of power, Kondo remained unfazed. Gazelle, now with perfect control over his energy, prepared for a decisive strike. He channeled his energy into his blade, confident that his newfound mastery would lead to victory. However, just as he moved with divine speed, a small bang echoed. Gazelle fell to his knees, blood pouring from his mouth, shocked by the red streak spreading across his stomach. Kondo's Nambu semi-automatic handgun had fired a necrosis bullet, a special type infused with Kondo's will. Gazelle, angry and humiliated, questioned Kondo's pride as a swordsman. Kondo coldly responded that pride was useless in battle, and his duty was to win by any means necessary. Despite Gazelle's desperate attempt to stand, his body failed him, incapacitated by the necrosis bullet. It was Kondo's ultimate skill. Sandalphon, Lord of Judgment, empowered his necrosis bullets, enabling him to destroy the magic channels within a target's body, even killing spiritual life forms. Gazelle, despite his formidable strength, couldn't overcome the ultimate skill barrier, making the duel's outcome inevitable. Kondo calmly stated his intent to detain Gazelle rather than kill him, promising release after everything was settled. However, his true plan involved using a Dominion bullet to dominate Gazelle, as he did with Kigali. This ruthless but rational approach highlighted Kondo's nature. Hakuro, witnessing Kondo's overwhelming strength, stood frustrated and unable to move. With that, Kondo's victory seemingly assured. Gabil, exuding confidence, charged ahead and called out a bespectacled man from the group, a man whose true capabilities were hidden behind his unassuming appearance. Gabil's decision, though making him seem a failure as a commander, was tactically justified given the strength of his chosen opponent. The bespectacled man, named Marco, shed his disguise and revealed his true identity as part of the single digits, specifically number 8. With this revelation, his demeanor shifted and he ordered his allies to move away. Marco, acknowledging Gabil's challenge, prepared for battle. Marco's companions, initially surprised and concerned, quickly understood his authority and complied with his orders. As they scattered, Marco faced Gabil, recognizing his strengths. Despite the potential danger, Marco was ready to confront Gabil, who was eager to prove himself against such a formidable opponent. Marco, a man of seemingly no distinctive features, had been with the Imperial Guardians for about 800 years. His unique skill, Adapter, allowed him to perfectly mimic anyone he saw, attracting the attention of Damrada, the then Guardian leader. This skill helped Marco rise to the rank of single digits after awakening as a saint. Marco held deep respect for Kondo, whose strength was incomprehensible even to him. Kondo's ability surpassed Marco's Adapter, easily defeating top ranks, including the 4 knights. This led Marco to almost worship Kondo, following his example and serving in the Imperial Intelligence Bureau as Kondo's fixer. Facing Gabil, Marco fought back with a spear, but quickly realized he couldn't win as he was. So, he decided to change into the form of the strongest person he believed could face Gabil. Marco moved away from Gabil and transformed into Kondo, using the ultimate enchantment alternative to enhance his adapter skill with even more precision. This transformation granted Marco abilities similar to Kondo's, giving him a formidable presence on the battlefield. Marco's true strength was revealed as he prepared to face Gabil. He transformed his weapon from a spear to a military sword, a legend-class weapon capable of changing shape. Meanwhile, Gabil held his vortex spear, a treasured magical weapon of the lizardman, and prepared to use his dragon skin ability to boost his defenses. Gabil and Marco, both at the level of saints, squared off. Gabil, confident in his defensive abilities, watched Marco's moves carefully. However, he was still mastering his newly awakened powers, making him vulnerable. As the battle began, Marco used Baikagoka Totsu, while Gabil countered with Vortex Crash. Gabil's careful response ensured his survival. While they were evenly matched in strength, Marco's skill level, thanks to his perfect imitation of Kondo, gave him an edge. However, Macro couldn't replicate even 80% of Kondo's true abilities, nor could he simulate Kondo's ultimate skill Sandalphon. If Macro faced Gazelle, he would be doomed. This basic version of Kondo stood on more equal footing with Gabil, and combined with Gabil's defenses, victory seemed assured for him. Yet luck often plays a critical role in battles. Macro appeared to be the overwhelming victor, but his win was a close call. As he watched Gabil collapse, Macro muttered to himself, acknowledging Gabil's strength. In this tense moment, Gabil's fate seemed sealed. At that moment, Soka appeared to protect her brother Gabil, despite knowing they couldn't defeat Macro. Gabil's troops, alongside Soka's force, rushed to his aid, showing immense courage. Individually, they couldn't match Saint-Level Macro, but their collective efforts and healing potions bought time. Macro's technique, modeled after Kondo's, destroyed enemies from within, nullifying potion effects. One by one, Gabil's troops began to fall, with Nanso among the unconscious. Macro's legend-class weapon gave him a significant advantage, and casualties continued to rise. Despite this, none of them died, thanks to Rimuru's influence on Gabil's evolution, which made everyone stronger. Even though they were out of the battle, their resilience kept them from a final defeat. However, they were at risk of being massacred. Gabil, seeing the dire situation, ordered a retreat. Soka, however, refused, stating her loyalty to Sir Sui and arguing that running would guarantee more deaths, including Gabil's. She insisted that their plan to buy time was the best option. Gabil, struggling to comprehend, emphasized the commander's role in minimizing casualties. Soka countered that their continued fight was the way to buy time and search for a chance at victory, despite Gabil's doubts about rescue. Gabil, aware that no support was coming from Rimuru or his other top officers, issued the order to retreat. However, his troops, displaying incredible loyalty and determination, defied his command. They insisted that Gabil was their hope and urged him to heal and rise again. Feeling ashamed for his momentary doubt, Gabil resolved to fight on, even if it meant relying on sheer willpower. Just then, Veyron and Zonda, Ultima's servants, arrived to assist. Veyron, standing beside Soka, prepared to fight Macro while Zonda focused on healing duties. The rest of the troops were instructed to protect the wounded. Veyron, despite having less energy than Macro, was more skilled, enough to potentially irritate and challenge him. Macro, frustrated by the continual reinforcements. As Macro fought back against Veyron, he momentarily glanced at the downed Gabil, creating an opening. Soka, seizing the opportunity, spoke up to draw his attention. Macro, recognizing the situation, chose to expose himself to Soka's kunai instead of avoiding it. This decision prevented Veyron from landing a more serious wound. Despite his greed to finish Gabil quickly, Macro ended up with a minor stab wound. Frustrated, he decided to focus on Veyron and Soka, with Zonda aiding in healing. Macro's aura-based technique, which left destructive energy inside opponents, was diagnosed by Zonda, who could heal Gabil by neutralizing the fighting force within him. Just when the situation seemed unpredictable, Macro unexpectedly stood up and announced he had to leave, having received an order to return. He teleported away, leaving Gabil and his crew with a chance to survive. Vaughn was indeed struggling against Footman, whose overwhelming magicule count put him at a significant disadvantage. Footman's loss of rational thought and Phobio's timely intervention were the only reasons Vaughn could still stand his ground. Phobio, known as the Black Leopard Fang and a member of Demon Lord Carelon's 3 lycanthropeers, had allied with Lord Rimuru, making him a welcome ally. Reflecting on his past mistakes, Phobio had a clearer evaluation of his abilities, realizing that even at full force, he couldn't beat Footman alone. Thus, he joined forces with Vaughn. Despite Footman's power, his attacks were monotonous due to his lack of logical thought, allowing Vaughn and Phobio to endure, though not to hope for victory. Meanwhile, Henrietta and Gobwa's elite troops were engaging Teare, who seemed reluctant in her attacks. Teare, apologetic about the situation, urged them to stop her as she tried to avoid killing anyone. Despite her lethal fighting skills, Teare retained her free will and wasn't voluntarily participating in the battle. Under Kigali's orders, she tried not to exercise her full force, giving Henrietta and the others a chance to stop her. However, the strength difference was too great, and their capture attempts were unsuccessful. Teare's previous manipulations had enraged Fobio, but he recognized that Footman's berserk state was due to Teare trying to prevent deaths. While he resented being reminded of his darker hours, he appreciated not facing Footman's full power. Teare's innocence in her remarks only fueled Fobio's anger, but there was little he could do except continue fighting alongside Vaughn. As the battle raged on, Fobio and Vaughn knew they had to push through, with Fobio vowing to address the situation with Teare later. The battlefield was in turmoil. Gadora, looking for a breakthrough, tried to assist her allies, but the strength of Teare and Footman proved overwhelming. Teare's reluctance to fight didn't make capturing her any easier due to her sheer power and skill. Footman, despite his loss of rational thought, was too strong for anything less than a concerted effort by Vaughn and Fobio to keep in place. Henrietta, a swift fighter, struggled to keep up with Teare, while Gadora's attempts to cast a net on her seemed futile. Soka and her team were occupied with Macro, leaving few resources to deal with Teare and Footman effectively. Updates from Moss painted a grim picture. Veyron and Zonda had gone to aid Gabil, creating a temporary stalemate. However, the overall situation remained precarious. Kondo had defeated Hakuro and matched King Gazel, and even the arrival of Agera and Esprit seemed unlikely to slow him down. Moss offered to join the fray as a last resort, but even his capabilities seemed doubtful against Kondo. Gadora, feeling the pressure, realized how heavily they relied on Rimuru and Benimaru. Gadora knew that having regrets now wouldn't help the situation. She couldn't afford to give up. It's not over yet. The fact that Lady Velgrynd hasn't acted yet proves that the demons are giving their best effort against her. The difference in strength must be massive, but they're still holding out for us. I'd never allow us to give up the fight before them. She thought of the proud and lofty Demonesses who, despite being relatively new to Tempest, had been appointed to the 12 lordly guardians, some of the highest positions in their government. Their strength was beyond Gadora's imagination, and the fact they were still fighting against Velgrynd, despite the palpable despair, was amazing in itself. We can't lose to them, Gadora resolved. Firing herself up further, she resumed her attempts to capture Teare. Agera stood before Kondo, ready to challenge him despite the odds. Esprit, focused on healing Gazelle and Hakuro, bowed out of the fight, leaving Agera to face Kondo alone. Agera, pointing his sword at Kondo, admired his skill and expressed his desire to compete against him. Hakuro interrupted, noting Agera's resemblance to someone he knew. Agera, calm and resolute, explained that he had dedicated his life to the sword. Hakuro suspected Agera might be the reincarnation of his grandfather, Byakuya Araki, but had no proof. Esprit suggested that it was possible, given Lady Carrera's ability to attract martial souls. As Hakuro and his cohorts engaged in conversation, they reflected on their efforts and the techniques they had learned. Despite their curiosity about Agera's true identity, the battlefield demanded their attention. Esprit continued her healing with impressive dedication, while Agera prepared to face Kondo. Kondo, relaxed and observing, recognized the need to eliminate threats to Kigali's ritual. Prioritizing his mission, he decided to entertain Agera's challenge, despite his usual rational approach. However, Kondo's attention was drawn to Velgrynd's movement and the progress of Kigali's forbidden curse, Dead Birthday. Realizing he needed to act, Kondo apologized to Agera, stating that his work came first. Putting away his military sword, Kondo strode away, leaving Agera frustrated but alive. Gadora, battling Velgrynd with his wits rather than brute force, continued his questioning to buy time. Velgrynd, although initially tolerant, grew fatigued with Gadora's relentless inquiries. She revealed their indifference to the Imperial army, aiming instead to awaken the stronger among them through war. Gadora's questioning grew more desperate, as he realized something felt off about Velgryn's answers. He asked about Masayuki's resemblance to Emperor Ludora, a detail that unsettled him. Velgryn's cold reaction and her claim of ignorance about Masayuki left Gadora fearing for his life, especially after implying Damrada's potential betrayal. Velgrynd pondered Gadora's revelation about Masayuki, realizing it might be significant. She decided to investigate further, but thanked Gadora for the information, offering to spare him in exchange. Despite her nonchalance, Velgrynd recognized Gadora's cleverness in stalling for time. Gadora, understanding his position, adopted a defiant tone, hiding his fear behind laughter. Velgrynd, amused by his slyness, decided to let him go, noting the change in the situation. The alternate Velgrynd battling Veldora required her attention, so she left Gadora with a warning to survive the war. With Velgrynd floating away to attend to other matters, Gadora was left behind. Then, Gadora was left in shock, utterly bewildered by the reality-defying scene before him. Velgrynd's dimensional connection had summoned an entire fleet of airships from a distant location, ignoring all conventional laws of time and space. Seeing the airships meant for an attack on Inglesia appear suddenly, Gadora struggled to comprehend how such a feat was possible. Teleporting such a large force over such a distance was considered nearly impossible due to the immense magic and precision required. Despite knowing that with Sir Rimuru, some extraordinary feats were possible, this level of magical manipulation transcended common sense. Gadora's mind raced, trying to reconcile the reality of what he witnessed with his understanding of magic and the laws that govern it. Gadora was bewildered by what he saw. The airship fleet was even more confused. The fleet of 300 airships, led by Major General Zamdo, was transporting the 30,000-strong Magical Beast Division toward the central continent. The journey was smooth and relatively safe at high altitude. In the flagship, however, Zamdo received sudden news of an important official's inspection, leaving him curious yet cautious about the VIP on board. As Zamdo carried out his duties, a communications officer urgently reported that the Marshal was coming, surprising Zamdo, who had no idea the Marshal was on board. Realizing the operation's significance, Zamdo quickly prepared to greet the Marshal. Zamdo, swiftly regaining his composure, ordered the officers to prepare for the Marshal's arrival. Velgrynd, one of the world's most stunning beauties, walked in, mesmerizing everyone. Her gentle voice commanded them back to work, understanding that any violence could jeopardize the flagship, especially with Emperor Ludora on board. Zamdo, eager to serve, introduced himself, but Velgrynd, focused on the mission, quickly took command. She instructed Zamdo to call Commander Gradim, who appeared on the display. Gradim, struck by Velgrynd's beauty, initially underestimated her strength. Velgrynd, uninterested in flattery, issued new orders: cancel the current operation and take control of the armed nation of Dworgen. Zamdo and Gradim were simultaneously struck by the gravity of Velgrynd's orders, indicating significant turmoil. While Zamdo showed nervousness, Gradim's arrogance prevented him from understanding Velgrynd's supremacy. Velgrynd, smiling, clarified that there was no failure in their mission. She stated that the plan had been in place from the beginning and ordered them to prepare for immediate action. Displeased with Gradim's arrogance, she decided to let it slide, emphasizing the urgency of their situation. Velgrynd announced her intention to perform a dimensional connection, instructing them to act quickly once complete. She intended to focus on handling Veldora and urged them to dominate the battlefield and capture promising enemies alive if possible. Ignoring Gradims, who is about to protest, Velgrynd swiftly got to work. After explaining her actions, she turned her back and placed her hand on the reinforced door leading to the outer deck of the airship. "Your Excellency, what are you doing? It's dangerous. Please come back at once." Zamdo shouted, concerned. "What? I just explained it to you. If I don't go outside, I can't perform the dimensional connection," Velgrynd replied, giving Zamdo a disdainful glance. Without hesitation, she opened the door and flew into the sky. Zamdo was horrified, knowing that opening the bulkhead at high altitude and speed was incredibly dangerous. The atmospheric pressure difference could have fatal consequences for everyone on the ship. While the crew were enhanced soldiers, Zamdo, a scientist, was an ordinary man who would suffer from the low temperature and lack of oxygen. Hurriedly trying to close the door, Zamdo's fears were unfounded, as Velgrynd had cast Dominate Space to shield the airship from any harm. Before Zamdo and his staff could even react, Velgrynd snapped her fingers, floating into the sky. Dimensional connection! A gigantic distortion in space, causing spatial oscillation, appeared in front of Velgrynd, stunning everyone on board. They couldn't fathom the phenomenon occurring before them, as it defied all human imagination and knowledge. Zamdo realized that Velgrynd, referring to Veldora as that boy, might be an entity of immense power, the guardian dragon of the Empire, Velgrynd herself. With a deepening smile, Velgrynd commanded them to make themselves useful. Her voice was unyielding, compelling Zamdo and Gradium to turn their airships toward the rift in space. Velgrynd's full fury transformed the battlefield, challenging the three Demonesses, Testarossa, Ultima, and Carrera, who fought fiercely but were overmatched. Despite Velgrynd's relentless attacks, the Demonesses, named by Rimuru, endured thanks to their strengthened bodies created from orichalc and their magical power. Velgrynd, surprised by their resilience, acknowledged their strength. The Demonesses, determined and undaunted, remained defiant, knowing that admitting defeat would be worse than death. Velgrynd, puzzled by their persistence, continued her assault, confident in her victory. However, Testarossa revealed that she had discovered the workings of Velgrynd's parallel existence. Their goal was to stop Velgrynd, not necessarily to defeat her. Testarossa explained that parallel existence had its limits. Velgrynd could only maintain a certain number of separate bodies, and defeating any of them would weaken her. Velgrynd, impressed by Testarossa's dignity and determination, even while being beaten, decided to listen. Ultima, echoing Testarossa, confirmed that their attacks had not been in vain. Velgrynd, acknowledging Testarossa's impressive combat sense, admitted the primal demon's resilience had taken more time than expected. Velgrynd commended Testarossa, even considering recruitment over needless killing. Carrera's remark about Veldora not pandering to them visibly annoyed Velgrynd, although she felt a sense of satisfaction seeing Veldora's growth. Realizing the necessity of focusing on her fight with Veldora, Velgrynd decided to cease battling the Demonesses, recognizing their resilience. Declaring her intention to postpone their fight, Velgrynd's separate body vanished, leaving the Demonesses to watch in stunned silence. The forest blazed as Velgrynd, cancelling her separate bodies, united them into one and transformed into her majestic dragon form. Clad in a cardinal aura, the sheer shockwave set the trees aflame. Veldora too reverted to his dragon form, summoning a raging tempest. The flickering flames illuminated the fierce battle between the two true dragons. Velgrynd, in her true form, faced Veldora, both displaying their immense power. It had been over 2,000 years since they last met in these forms. Velgrynd, having joined Emperor Ludora's side long ago, had learned to replicate herself using separate body only after Veldora was sealed away. Recalling their past encounter, where she toyed with him briefly before he fled, Velgrynd noted that the sealing hadn't weakened him. In fact, he seemed stronger. She aimed to tame her brother, and if that failed, she had Ludora's power to rely on. Velgrynd planned to capture Veldora, understanding the importance of controlling his vast magicule energy effectively. She intended to train Veldora further, using his inexperience to end their bout quickly. Velgrynd's ultimate goal was to secure victory for herself and Emperor Ludora, positioning Veldora as a powerful ally in their game. With this in mind, she carefully initiated her offensive against Veldora. The fight between Velgrynd and Veldora was intense from the start. Velgrynd unleashed her burning breath, a superheated beam, which Veldora skillfully evaded. He knew the beam's special effect, accelerated destruction, would cause his magical force to go berserk. Velgrynd acknowledged Veldora's growth, realizing he was no longer just a rampaging fool, but someone deserving careful assessment. Veldora's ultimate skill, Faust, Lord of Investigation, allowed him to analyze and assess threats accurately. As Velgrynd grew more alarmed, Veldora took the initiative, unleashing his thunderstorm roar. Velgrynd, however, brushed off the attack, recognizing his achievement of an ultimate skill and congratulating him sincerely. Velgrynd, after taking Veldora's attack, realized the true threat her brother posed. His ultimate skill, Faust, allowed him precise control over his immense magicule force. This understanding prompted Velgrynd to unleash her full power. She activated her ultimate skill, Ruguel, Lord of Relief, summoning 11 rays of light from nuclear cannon. Veldora, sensing the danger, attempted to neutralize the attack with magic barrier, but failed to completely block it. Despite sustaining damage, he launched his own counterattack with Ruinous Tempest, incorporating the ultimate skill effects he observed from Velgrynd. The fierce exchange pushed Velgrynd to the brink. Enraged and determined to prove her superiority, she resolved to end the battle swiftly with a powerful follow-up attack. Velgrynd's attack was relentless, combining precision and overwhelming force. She teleported above Veldora, unleashing a scorching breath attack. Veldora, despite his agility, found himself surrounded by a cage of flame. Trusting his instincts, he maneuvered through the fiery onslaught, avoiding direct hits. Yet Velgrynd's strategy revealed her true intent. Her excessive heat attack caused the ground to boil and evaporate, creating an environment of molten lava. The bloody lava enveloped the area, completing the flaming cage around Veldora. Velgrynd's ultimate skill, Ruguel, had the essence of relief or support, allowing her to amplify effects to the extreme. Applying it to the cage of flame increased the heat to tens of thousands of degrees, creating an inescapable scorching prison. Excessive support could exhaust the subject, manipulating all the world's energy at will. As Velgrynd's burning embrace seemed to secure her victory, she was taken aback. Sensing a presence behind her, she turned to find Veldora in human form, gloating. His high-pitched laugh echoed, and Velgrynd, for the first time, truly recognized him as a lethal threat. Veldora's laughter might have been a tactic to agitate Velgrynd, but he knew he couldn't rest easy. Despite the vast difference in strength, he had learned from past experiences, particularly from fighting Hinata. She had a strategic approach, attacking only when an opening presented itself and avoiding lethal hits. Reflecting on his battles, Veldora realized that Hinata seemed to know all his moves and habits, which he initially thought was cheating. However, the experience taught him how to fight a superior opponent. His training with demons added cunning to his strategy, understanding that exhausting his opponent could lead to victory. Observing Rimuru's lifestyle broadened Veldora's horizons, helping him grow and think in new ways. This growth was evident in his battle against Velgrynd. He knew how to avoid losing and was acting on it. Velgrynd unleashed her burning embrace, creating a deadly cage of flame. Veldora, desperate to avoid the attack, didn't initially realize it was a trap. However, his predict danger skill, part of his ultimate skill Faust, alerted him to the imminent threat, saving his life. As bloody lava shot up from below, Veldora understood Velgrynd's true intent. Realizing he couldn't escape using Ruinous Tempest or spatial transport, Investigate Truth, another aspect of Faust, provided an optimal solution, transforming into his human form to weave through the barrage. Despite the risk, he activated Control Probability, another Faust skill, which manipulated events in his favor, doubling his chances of success to 100%. With the odds now assured, Veldora transformed and managed to escape the fiery cage, evading Velgrynd's deadly trap. His strategic use of Faust skills demonstrated his growth and cunning, allowing him to avoid defeat. Velgrynd felt her composure slipping as she observed Veldora, now recognizing him as a formidable opponent. He had grown significantly, mastering an ultimate ability and escaping a seemingly irreversible situation. She had underestimated him, assuming she would teach him a lesson, but now realized they were equals, if not more. Adjusting her strategy, Velgrynd adopted a cautious approach. Veldora, noticing her change in demeanor, returned to his dragon form and declared his intent to fight with all his might. He felt confident in his ultimate skill, Storm Blast, which he had developed with Rimuru's support. Unleashing the storm blast, Veldora's thunderstorm roar sent invisible rays of light in all directions. Velgrynd, dismissing the rays as non-threatening, fell into his trap. As the storm blast's destructive power intersected, Velgrynd realized too late the devastating impact of Veldora's new technique. Despite his smugness, Veldora's victory was short-lived as Velgrynd abandoned the battle's outcome to focus on her mission. She had surreptitiously positioned the Emperor's flagship closer, allowing Lieutenant Kondo to unleash his judgment bullet. Fired at near light speed, it penetrated Veldora's defenses, posing a lethal threat to his very existence. Velgrynd's meticulous calculation ensured that this powerful attack, born from Kondo's ultimate skill Sandalphon, Lord of Judgment, was devastatingly effective. Veldora's elation turned to shock as he realized Velgrynd had turned to someone else for help, abandoning their competition. Immobilized by Kondo's single blow, alarms rang in Veldora's mind as he faced a life-threatening crisis. Despite his initial relaxation, knowing he could be revived through the soul corridor connected to Rimuru, the situation quickly worsened. Emperor Ludora, disguised as another man on the airship's deck, began to take over Veldora's spirit with regalia dominion. Understanding the dire implications, Veldora knew he couldn't let this happen. To protect Rimuru and prevent any harm through their soul corridor, Veldora made the difficult decision to cut the connection himself. As his consciousness faded into darkness, he entrusted Rimuru with the fight, reflecting his unwavering loyalty and determination to safeguard his ally. To protect Rimuru and prevent any harm through their soul corridor, Veldora made the difficult decision to cut the connection himself. As his consciousness faded into darkness, he entrusted Rimuru with the fight, reflecting his unwavering loyalty and determination to safeguard his ally. Raphael, usually composed and logical, also seemed rattled by the unexpected turn of events. It hurriedly analyzed their location, revealing that they were indeed trapped in a phantom fortress, a different dimension used to imprison troublesome entities. Despite the dire situation, Rimuru's anger galvanized him into action. He gathered his companions, explaining the situation and his plan. With Veldora captured by Emperor Ludora, their immediate priority was to break free and rescue him. Rimuru decided to use spatial transport to reach Ludora and engage in what would undoubtedly be a fierce battle to reclaim Veldora. Benimaru, ever the dependable right-hand man, acknowledged the gravity of their situation and prepared for combat. Rimuru, knowing the importance of not losing his cool, managed to swallow his anger and calmly instructed his friends to focus on defending their city, especially with the impending burden on Ramirez. Laplace, despite his worry about escaping the Phantom Fortress, was reassured by Rimuru's resolve to smash our way out. Raphael, completing its analysis, confirmed their readiness to proceed. Rimuru, driven by the urgent need to save Veldora and stop Ludora's plans, initiated the spatial transport. And he reappeared exactly where he intended, facing two true dragons and an airship. With no hesitation, he prepared for the fight ahead. Raphael, incessantly warning him of the danger, was silenced by Rimuru's command to take action. Summoning demons and evolving Testarossa, Ultima, and Carrera were Raphael's recommendations to bolster their firepower. Connected through soul corridors, Rimuru's calculations allowed them to escape the Phantom Fortress. Velgrynd noticed their arrival, surprised they had escaped. Rimuru, Benimaru, and the others were on high alert, prepared to defend their capital and liberate Veldora. Communicating with Testarossa, Ultima, and Carrera, Rimuru confirmed they were ready for battle despite their injuries. Just as Rimuru was about to act on Raphael's suggestion, Kondo made his move, firing a bullet at Rimuru. Thanks to Raphael's swift defense using absolute defense, the attack was neutralized. Raphael's analysis revealed the attack involved the ultimate skill Sandalphon, Lord of Judgment. Rimuru let Raphael handle the situation as he glanced at Kondo, Damrata, and the others. He knew he would deal with them later, especially with the threat they posed to Veldora. Kondo's earlier attack, near the speed of light, was a danger if too close, but manageable from a distance. Deciding to summon reinforcements, Rimuru called forth the demons with a massive magic circle in the sky. The ominous gate summoned Testarossa, her fellow demonesses, 2 demon peers, 4 archdemons, and 600 rank-and-file demons, forming the majority of the Black Corps. Diablo, ever perceptive, had already sent his legion to defend the city. As Rimuru landed, the demons knelt before him, expressing sorrow for their perceived failure. Rimuru reassured them, acknowledging their efforts against Velgrynd and the unforeseen challenge of her parallel existence. Issuing a stern order, Rimuru promised to grant them more power, but they had to stay awake during their evolution. Although aware of his own shortcomings during his harvest festival, he emphasized the need for everyone to keep up. The 3 demonesses responded to Rimuru's command with sneaky smiles, confident in their abilities. Without hesitation, Rimuru granted souls to each of them, knowing failure wasn't an option. He issued stern orders to the demons, allowing them to wreak havoc, but forbidding any deaths or letting enemies stand in their way. When Diablo inquired about Velgrynd, Rimuru firmly declared her an enemy if she opposed them. The demons, including Benimaru, Soei, and Shion, prepared for battle with determined expressions. As Rimuru focused on Veldora, he noticed Velgrynd had fully recovered by taking magicules from Veldora. Now, with Veldora under Emperor Ludora's control and Velgrynd ready to engage, Rimuru faced the daunting task of battling 2 true dragons. Determined, Rimuru took flight, ready to rescue Veldora. After Rimuru flew away, his allies swiftly moved into action. Benimaru, leveraging his battlefield expertise, issued instructions and sent out thought communications to the top brass in the city, putting them into emergency mode. Soei dispatched his replications far and wide to gather information. Diablo, meanwhile, was brimming with excitement. "Did you see it, everyone? Sir Rimuru is finally going to show us his true colors." Shion rolled her eyes. "You fool! Sir Rimuru is always showing his true colors no matter the situation. Leave the excitement for later. We must concentrate on crushing our enemies." Despite Diablo's surprise at seeing Rimuru on a rampage, he knew that now was the time for action. Benimaru reminded everyone that their role as Rimuru's top soldiers was to handle the extraneous distractions. Rimuru's edict was gospel to them. For the demons summoned by Rimuru, this was a moment of supreme pleasure. Their faces were full of joy, bristling with strength as they eagerly awaited the call to serve. Rimuru, demonstrating the depth of his anger, gave a simple yet powerful command: "Kill all our enemies." The demons burned with a desire to fulfill their lord's command. "As our lord wishes." Diablo raised a hand to put them at ease. "Do you understand Sir Rimuru's order? He stated that not even one of you may die. Know that death would be a mortal sin, one that would be unforgivable even if we all offered our heads to him." His resonant declarations silenced the demons. Benimaru reinforced the message, ensuring the demons understood the gravity of their mission. Death was not an option, even for immortals. "So," Diablo continued, "we are going to assign you your roles. Sir Benimaru, can you handle that for me?" Benimaru, wondering about Diablo's plans, asked, "What about you?" "Oh, leave me out of it, if you could. There's a certain rat I'm interested in, so I'm going to deal with him first." Benimaru shrugged, expecting such a reply from Diablo. "I see. Well, do whatever you like then." Benimaru understood that Diablo operated on his own terms and answered directly to Rimuru. Thus, even Benimaru couldn't order him around. With Diablo's blessing, Benimaru began issuing orders. "All right, Diablo, you are hereby free to go. Moss will continue to send me information from the battlefield, as before. You may travel anywhere on the battlefield you like, as long as you keep Sir Rimuru's order in mind." Diablo nodded with a smile as Moss voiced his agreement, using his replications to provide real-time battlefield intel to Benimaru. "You better not exclude me," Shion insisted, ready for action. While limited to teleporting to visible locations, her strength in battle was invaluable. "Of course not. We'll be counting on your strength," Benimaru chuckled. He detected 8 notable presences on the airship, aside from Emperor Ludora, posing a significant but manageable challenge. Soka warned about the 30,000 enemy reinforcements streaming in, and Benimaru acknowledged the urgency. He had ordered Gabil to stall as long as possible, aiming to bring the Emperor into custody swiftly. Their primary goal was to buy time and prevent an attack on the city by targeting the airship. The biggest menace. The 8 presences consisted of Velgryn's replication, Lieutenant Kondo, Damrada, the 4 knights guarding the Emperor, and Macro. Benimaru's unique skill-born leader enabled him to detect them. Suddenly, Benimaru received good news. Geld just contacted me. His evolution is complete, so he's woken up. Geld, the Barrier Lord, had awakened, and his men were also beginning to stir. This added a significant boost to their city defense. That's very good news. If Sir Geld is joining the city defense, we should be able to relieve the Diable Chevaliers of that duty, Benimaru noted. Can I put them under my command? Xion asked. We don't have access to venom, so we can't engage in any full group maneuvers. I will let each of you make your own decisions, depending on the war situation. Understood, Xion responded, ready to take on her role in the ensuing battle. After a brief exchange, everyone had their roles. Trusting in their victory was essential, but Benimaru had one more consideration. Now are you all able to fight? Benimaru asked Testarossa and her friends. He wasn't interested in debates, he just needed to know if they could be counted on in battle. No need to ask them. If anyone answered no to that question, I would kick them out of the force, Diablo said, turning his attention to the Demonesses. They stood up without any hesitation. What a foolish question. There is nothing Diablo can do that I can't, Testarossa replied confidently. It sounds a little harsh, but I don't have a problem with it. I like to fight after all, Ultima added. If I'm going to live up to your expectations, I can't afford to make another mistake. Now is no time for rest, Carrera declared. The trio was united in their desire to serve Sir Rimuru. Their servants shared the same eagerness, rapidly completing their evolution. With the greatest joy, they received their orders, ready to unleash their full strength in the upcoming battle. That moment, Testarossa, Ultima, and Carrera evolved into Devil Lords, joining Diablo in this exalted state. This transformation elevated them to the ranks of virtual demigods, among the strongest entities in the world. Capable of defeating even a demon peer effortlessly, they, along with the other primals, reached a state with no restrictions holding them back. As Diablo's servant Venom evolved into a demon peer, similar transformations occurred among those serving under the 3 Demonesses. Moss and Veyron, though remaining demon peers, saw their magicule counts rise to levels comparable to awakened demon lords. Agera, Esprit, Zonda, and Cien reached a level as demon peers that surpassed even budding demon lords, evolving to the highest ranks of demon dom. These demons, now of the same rank but with clear differences in abilities, were bestowed noble titles. Moss became a Grand Duke, Veyron a Duke, Agera a Marquis, Esprit a Count, and Cien and Zonda Viscounts. Venom was recognized as a Baron. Additionally, several brand new archdemons emerged post-evolution, serving as commanders and equivalent to knights. These newly evolved demons, nearly 600 strong, would be known as Diable Chevaliers, comparable to high-level Magic-born. Their enhanced strength and evolution meant they could be more helpful to Rimuru than ever before. Satisfied with the demon's readiness, Benimaru nodded. Very good. Let's see what you can do then. The 3 Demonesses and their armies were tasked with assaulting the airship. Benimaru assigned Testarossa to eliminate the knights guarding the Emperor's flagship. Ultima, eager to prove herself, intervened but was quickly reminded by Diablo to follow Benimaru's orders. Benimaru outlined the plan. Testarossa would lead the initial assault, followed by Xion, Soka, Ultima, Carrera, and himself. Their focus was on defeating Velgryn's separate body and the other 7 single digits. Xion, willing to take on multiple opponents, was reminded not to overcommit. Benimaru then addressed Veyron and the others, emphasizing the importance of staying vigilant and using only the necessary force. He assigned 100 guards to prevent escapes from the airship and directed the remaining 500 Diable Chevaliers to support Gabil and his team. Benimaru, addressing the need for a commander, agreed with Testarosa's suggestion of Cien, who knew Moss well and was skilled in handling such tasks. Cien, overjoyed, sprang into action with his army, flying off to assist Gabil and his troops, ensuring their survival. With their direction decided, Testarossa would lead the initial attack, supported by top elites storming the airship. 100 Diable Chevaliers would blockade the Emperor's airship, while Benimaru, Shion, Soei, and others performed the raid. 3 Devil Lords and 4 Demon Peers were also prepared for battle. Carrera, pleased with their selection, and Diablo, with a smile, sent them off. Testarossa, confident in her abilities, instructed her servant demons to ensure none of their enemies escaped. Others took flight, positioning themselves strategically to surround the airship. Before they started, a thought occurred to Ultima. "So, what are you up to anyway, Diablo?" she asked. Carrera turned toward Diablo, curious. He looked a little surprised, then smiled serenely. "As I intimated to you, I have an important role to play." That smile made them suspicious. "You said something about a rat," Carrera added. "Who is it?" "That's nothing you need to know." "Whoa, hang on, Diablo. It's not a good idea to keep secrets, don't you think?" Ultima protested. "Yeah," agreed Ultima. "Sir Rimuru always talks about how important it is to share information." Diablo had no other choice. "I have the noble mission of watching over the glorious Sir Rimuru in combat. It is a vital role to take, and I cannot leave it to any of you." It was outrageous, and he shamelessly came out with it. Lucky for him that Benimaru wasn't there, but if he was, he would probably just roll his eyes. Ultima and Carrera were less than convinced. "What? Oh, come on! I want to see Sir Rimuru in action too!" Ultima protested. "Wait a minute, are you going to enjoy that perk alone? Because even if you are our boss, that doesn't excuse you acting like a tyrant." It was a natural reaction. Ultima wondered why nobody asked this question when Benimaru was around, but Carrera knew the odds were against them. If Testarossa were there, it would be different. But with just Ultima and herself, they couldn't wrangle Diablo. "Oh, do we have a problem with this?" "Of course we do," Ultima protested. "I'll follow your orders," said Carrera, "but I can't say I like them much." Diablo pondered a moment. "Well, all right. I will tell you the truth then. You see, there is someone on the enemy side capable of controlling and manipulating alternate dimensions. I think it is likely Lady Velgrynd, but if you get caught in her trap, you may have all connections to this world taken away from you." "I see. It would be a good idea to leave someone behind then," Carrera conceded. Diablo solemnly nodded. "Exactly. I would like to be part of the fight, but sadly, it is not meant to be." He chuckled inwardly. Nimble at talking his way out of situations, Diablo had a knack for coming up with the best excuses, a talent Rimuru took advantage of at times too. Ultima, however, was sharper. "So who's the rat?" Diablo, inwardly sneering, found the idea of a front-row seat to the battle between Rimuru and Velgrynd appealing, but these pests refusing to go away was frustrating. Diablo's sarcasm conveyed his irritation. "It's a pity, Ultima. I would have thought you'd know without me telling you." Realizing there was no reason to hide it, he revealed, "It's Yuki Kagarazaka. I haven't seen any sign of him so far. If he's hiding somewhere on the airship, that would be ideal. But if he wants to mess with Sir Rimuru, we can't just leave him there, can we?" Ultima and Carrera agreed, recognizing the importance of not letting Yuki interfere. Diablo, half motivated by his selfish desire to watch Rimuru fight, emphasized the need to stay behind and keep an eye on Rimuru. "Well, all right," said Carrera. "I'll just take my frustration out on their side." "Yes, by all means," Diablo agreed. "You don't have any objection to us going on a rampage, do you?" asked Ultima. "Of course not. In fact, you can even dispatch Ludora if you like." That sounds fun. We'll take you up on it then." "Totally. Okay, I'm gonna go work out some of my frustrations on those guys." Diablo nodded vigorously. Carrera and Ultima took off, eager to join the battle. Diablo, smiling, wished them good luck before heading to Rimuru. Left behind, Laplace felt a bit sorry for himself. "Nobody even cares about me, huh?" Feeling neglected, he decided to help Lady Kigali and went on his way, reporting his plans to no one in particular. In the midst of the unfolding battle, an incredible transformation began to take place among the monsters. Resonating with Rimuru's anger, they started to evolve at an astounding rate, rebuilding their bodies and acquiring new abilities. This phenomenon, driven by the skill food chain, inadvertently increased Rimuru's own power, without him even realizing it. Geld, who had awakened and was now responsive, was just the beginning. The eerie and unexpected evolutions spread among the monsters, with even those still asleep poised to follow in these transformative footsteps. This wasn't merely about awakenings and evolutions. It was a meticulously managed process, significantly boosting Rimuru's power. As these changes unfolded, Rimuru's full force was on the verge of being unleashed, surpassing previously unknown limits. The synergy between him and the evolving monsters promised to turn the tide of battle in their favor. Several men stood at the bow of the Emperor's flagship. At the forefront was Ludora, flanked by Kondo and Damrada. 4 knights guarded them in a square formation, ranked 3rd to 6th in the Imperial Order, with Marco and the remaining single digits standing behind Kondo. Velgrynd, typically seated to Ludora's right, had a replication in place to protect him if necessary. However, with her focus on the battle against Rimuru, she now lay limp and unconscious, leaning against Ludora. As Ludora gently stroked Velgrynd's blue hair, he observed Rimuru's actions. "He is something else entirely now," the Emperor muttered in disgust. "That was my error of judgment. Perhaps it was the slime we needed to deal with first?" In essence, the Emperor admitted that the battle wasn't as resolved as he had thought. Until just a little earlier, the whole airship was in a celebratory mood after capturing Veldora. However, that atmosphere had vanished as they recognized Rimuru and his formidable force as their enemies. The Demon Lord had returned, accompanied by his highest-ranking Magicborn. Ludora admitted, "I suppose I underestimated his ability to escape from the Phantom Fortress. Having their master and main power source taken away must have made them desperate to return." He smiled, but the sight of Rimuru neutralizing Kondo's attack tempered his optimism. The most pressing concern was Rimuru's army of demons. The sheer quantity of incarnated greater demons was daunting, and Rimuru's ability to further boost their powers was an enigma. This unpredictability made Ludora wary, knowing that underestimating Rimuru again could lead to catastrophic consequences. Observing the formidable Demon Lord Rimuru, Kondo realized the severity of their situation. Despite using his most powerful tools, neither the removal nor necrosis bullets had any effect on Rimuru. This reinforced Ludora's assertion of Rimuru being an exceedingly dangerous opponent. Kondo recognized the miscalculation in prioritizing Veldora's capture over neutralizing Rimuru simultaneously. This strategic error became glaringly evident as Rimuru's fury at losing Veldora mirrored the rage Veldora would have felt if Rimuru were lost. Kondo's attempt to finish Rimuru with his best attacks failed miserably, underscoring the need for a serious engagement. Ludora, keenly aware of Rimuru's threat, emphasized the importance of vigilance. He declared that the 4 knights alone wouldn't suffice and proposed testing Veldora's capabilities. This was a tactic to ensure everyone understood the gravity of the threat Rimuru posed, reinforcing the necessity of caution. As the game reached its climax, Ludora aimed to eliminate Guy without losing any of his key personnel. The capture of Veldora had given the Empire a significant advantage, placing them on the brink of concluding the protracted struggle. Making a mistake at this juncture would be inexcusable. Out of an abundance of caution, Ludora decided to pit Veldora against Rimuru, with Velgrynd supporting him. He believed Kondo and his team could handle Rimuru's remaining forces without issue. Although Ludora initially wanted to recruit Rimuru, he now saw exterminating him as the only option, considering Veldora their main objective. Compared to a true dragon, a demon lord seemed as vulnerable as a small mouse. Despite Rimuru's formidable presence, Ludora believed that with two true dragons on their side, Rimuru's defeat was inevitable. However, Ludora's mind was not entirely free of concern. Ludora pondered why Veldora stopped resisting his thrall. Although he could eventually fully take over Veldora, something seemed off. Through Regalia Dominion, Ludora sensed Veldora's rage and realized the dragon wasn't the type to give up easily. Doubts swirled in his mind, wondering if Veldora was protecting something more important than himself. Ridiculous, Ludora muttered, shaking his head. The idea that Veldora put the demon lord Rimuru ahead of himself seemed impossible to accept. Velgrynd, in her human form, approached Veldora, gently stroking his scales as she spoke. "Good boy. The next time you wake up, you will be one of us. Then we'll give you the best care in the world." She believed the end of their long struggle was in sight, but it wouldn't come as easily as she hoped. Suddenly Rimuru appeared, throwing Velgrynd off balance. His escape from the Phantom Fortress lingered in her mind as an unsettling feat. As she pondered her next move, Rimuru began summoning a large number of demons, bestowing them with new powers. This bold act seemed like a provocation, almost daring Velgrynd to try and catch him. Among the summoned demons were Testarossa and her friends, now evolved into Devil Lords, a higher plane of existence. This development made Velgrynd wary. The aura of Rimuru's anger bore a resemblance to that of her brother Veldora, an aura of sheer dominance akin to a true dragon. This unbelievable sight confirmed the abnormality of the situation. If someone had briefed her on this, she might have laughed it off. But seeing it firsthand left no room for doubt. Rimuru, radiating violent waves of intense anger, posed a clear and present danger. Any human without resistance would perish instantly, and even those considered strong, below an A rank, would stand no chance. Velgrynd realized that the primals were likely aiding Rimuru, shattering her assumption that he had merely tricked Veldora into helping him. This bout of Lord's ambition demonstrated that Rimuru was in a class of his own. Reflecting on Veldora's growth since his release, she acknowledged the Demon Lord's influence. Velgrynd had planned to return home to rest and recuperate, but now she saw the urgency in eliminating Rimuru. If they couldn't get rid of him here, it would spell disaster for Ludora. Resolving to deal with Rimuru directly, she prepared to crush him once and for all, recognizing that he would remain a significant threat otherwise. With her magicals fully replenished by Veldora, Velgrynd prepared to fight at full strength. She abandoned the notion that victory was guaranteed, realizing that underestimating Rimuru had been a mistake. If they had dealt with him in the Phantom Fortress, this situation wouldn't have escalated. Contrary to Velgrynd's expectations, it was only Rimuru confronting her. Seeing this as an opportunity, she believed that working together with Veldora ensured their victory. However, she knew the battle needed to be swift to avoid prolonged conflict. "Ludora, give Veldora the order to strike the Demon Lord Rimuru with all his might for me, could you?" Velgrynd called out. You're as wary of him as I am then? In that case, no need for hesitation. Veldora, defeat the enemy before you." Ludora responded, activating Regalia Dominion. Velgrynd felt a sense of relief, confident in their combined strength. It was one demon lord against two true dragons, making any other outcome unthinkable. With both Velgrynd and Ludora on high alert, the stage was set for a terrifying battle to begin. Rimuru flew toward Velgrynd, ready to engage her. Veldora roared into the sky, shaking the atmosphere as he and Velgrynd launched their attacks, each aiming to annihilate Rimuru. From the very first move, Veldora went all out, unleashing the Storm Blast, a destructive roar that even pained Velgrynd. Raphael, detecting the threat, began to use absolute defense to neutralize the attack. However, Rimuru interrupted with a shouted order, "No! Evade, you idiot!" Raphael, confused by the change in strategy, carried out the command. Despite its optimal plan of a counterattack using absolute defense, Raphael had to comply. This caused a minor disruption in its computations, a rare occurrence reflecting its long partnership with Rimuru. The storm blast narrowly missed Rimuru as he took evasive action. An explosion followed, scattering destruction in its wake. A delay in Rimuru's maneuver would have resulted in severe injury. Raphael, seeing the unexpected outcome, grew more confused. A computing error? An unexpected contingency? I do not understand. Raphael's computations were flawless, or so it believed. It began scanning through its data, seeking any overlooked variables. Despite its near-quantum computing speeds, the cause of the discrepancy remained elusive. Confusion. According to estimates, it should have been 100% defendable. The words slipped out, making Raphael sound as though it were making excuses, an improbable occurrence for a mere skill. With the battle raging, there was no time to delve deeply into this anomaly. Rimuru reprimanded the confused Raphael. "Quit fooling around. Veldora has Faust, and part of that is the skill control probability, right? Real bad news." Raphael realized Rimuru was correct. Forgetting such a critical detail was uncharacteristic and strange. Something was interfering with it, but the cause was unknown. It struggled with whether to inform Rimuru, fearing it might be branded as incompetent. Even as Raphael felt like betraying its lord, Rimuru's reassuring words continued to flow into its increasingly befuddled mind. "Veldora's a reckless fighter. It's not weird at all that he's outperforming even your perfect calculations. Don't get worked up just because you made a little mistake. That's how unpredictable he is. Quit worrying about it. Just believe in yourself. I'll handle Veldora, so you do something about Velgrynd," Rimuru said. Rimuru treated Raphael like a true partner, not just a skill. "All right, there's two of them, but with you and me, that makes two as well. If you can hold Velgrynd down, I can free Veldora in the meantime, so you gotta hold out, okay? No matter what it takes. I'm counting on you, bud." This was enough to soothe Raphael's confused heart. He is relying on me, even when I was wrong. Raphael was constantly making mistakes, yet Rimuru still trusted it. "I am nothing more than a computational aid, but he still needs me." With its anxiety gone and confidence restored, the Lord of Wisdom responded, "Be acknowledged. I understand." Moving on to the interception of the subject Velgrynd. Rimuru, the master Raphael loved so much, wasn't small-minded about uncertainties like probabilities. All Raphael needed to do was trust in Rimuru and continue following his lead. "By the way," Rimuru casually added, "I've never really called you by a proper name before. There's Raphael, yeah, but that's a skill name. It doesn't really count. I think I'll take this opportunity to give you one right now." Raphael found this incomprehensible. A strange feeling coursed through it, bewilderment, joy, an outpouring of emotion. It couldn't hide its confusion at this incalculable uncertainty that had sprouted inside of it. What was he talking about? Despite the confusion, Raphael understood Rimuru's intention. He cares about me because I was underperforming. Rimuru must have been more devastated than anyone else when Veldora was taken. Yet, he still showed consideration for others. That's who Rimuru was. Okay, how about Ciel? You've got knowledge as wide as the open sky, so Ciel, get it? I don't know if you'll like it at first, but bear with me. Hell, if you have a problem with it, take it out on that red guy. Rimuru spoke quickly, as if trying to hide his embarrassment. Raphael, or Ciel, experienced a feeling of contentment that no skill was supposed to feel. I am now in eternal bliss. And with that, the moment of evolution arrived. The ultimate skill, Raphael, Lord of Wisdom, was reborn as Manas Ciel. I am Ciel, a Manas or theosophical core merged with a skill. I exist alongside the soul of Sir Rimuru, providing support. It will be a pleasure to work with you. With its new identity as Ciel, the ultimate skill felt an overwhelming sense of euphoria upon hearing Rimuru's voice. The crisis that once loomed over them now seemed trivial. Okay, so go show off some of your power to them. Rimuru's order was more than a command. It was the greatest of rewards. As you command, my lord, Ciel responded with newfound vigor. As ordered by Rimuru, Ciel, formerly Raphael, intercepted Velgrynd. Her burning breath was effortlessly blocked by Uriel's absolute defense, stunning Velgrynd into silence. She hadn't gone easy on Rimuru, using Raguel, Lord of Relief, to enhance her breath, making it formidable enough to breach any barrier, except Rimuru's defenses. Rimuru showed no sign of exhaustion, even withstanding attacks that would have felled the three Demonesses in their tracks. This demonstrated that he wasn't an opponent to be taken lightly. Velgrynd, believing she had an edge in Magicule count, considered the quality of her skills or Rimuru's possible built-in resistance to heat attacks. Deciding to take action, Velgrynd created partial separate bodies to launch 11 rays of light, her nuclear cannon attack. These rays, combined with another round of burning breath, formed a multi-stage, 22-part heat attack capable of vaporizing an asteroid. Yet Rimuru repelled all of them with a shield of light, using minimal movement. Velgrynd, infuriated by Rimuru's imperviousness to heat, realized her attacks had been a waste of time. Rimuru consumed almost no energy, making Velgrynd fear she might exhaust herself first. Rimuru's lack of attention towards her, focusing instead on Veldora and evading his attacks, further enraged Velgrynd. This indifference was perceived as a declaration that he didn't see her as a threat. Determined to make Rimuru regret underestimating her, Velgrynd decided to unleash the most powerful attack in her possession. With a hateful glance at Rimuru, Velgrynd began conjuring her immense magical force, channeling it through her body. Raguel's support and her own heat symbolized acceleration, allowing her to reach thousands of times the speed of sound, the fastest physical speed in existence. Velgrynd knew that no physical or spiritual life form could withstand continuous forced acceleration. Her ultimate technique, cardinal acceleration, was designed to make her target's body rot away completely. "Prepare to have your body rot away, not a single piece of flesh left. Cardinal acceleration," she roared. Cardinal acceleration, eclipsing even burning embrace, contained the full force and authority of Velgrynd. She had crafted it in secret for Velzard, intending to use it in their final battle. But her rage against Rimuru compelled her to unleash it now. A wave of doom coursed toward Rimuru, symbolizing the pride of the flame dragon at her fastest, capable of collapsing all matter instantly. Velgrynd was confident that Rimuru, busy focusing on Veldora, wouldn't have time to react. But to her astonishment, Rimuru stood unharmed. "No, it can't be." Velgrynd doubted her own eyes. An impossible-to-avoid, utterly lethal blow had left him unscathed. Even the Demon Lord Guy Crimson or her sister Velzard could have been taken down by it, or so she thought. "You're unharmed? That's impossible. My cardinal acceleration works against every type of barrier and defensive skill. If you took it that easily, what did you even do?" Velgrynd was clearly losing her cool. The reality of Rimuru's resilience was too much to grasp, gravely affecting her composure. "Huh," Rimuru replied. "Well, it was a close call, yeah, but given the impulsiveness of it, it was pretty easy to eat up, you know." This was, in fact, entirely the work of Ciel, who was dedicated to handling Velgrynd. Ciel's calculations were spot on, with the intention of making Velgrynd attack Rimuru. Putting Rimuru first, Ciel ran Analyze and Assess on Velgrynd's nature, selected an effective response, and implemented it. The light shield Rimuru used had a special effect on Velgrynd's powers. Ciel, integrating all of Rimuru's ultimate skills, utilized Belzebuth, Lord of Gluttony. Through predation, Ciel grasped Velgrynd's cardinal acceleration and used the Isolate skill to capture and banish the attack into complex space, an evolved version of Rimuru's stomach. This attack could have destroyed Rimuru, as it couldn't be defended against with normal methods, and even Raphael wouldn't have coped with it. But Ciel wasn't Raphael. As an evolved presence, Ciel handled the attack by determining its nature and effectively wielding Belzebuth. Once Isolate was invoked, all that remained was to absorb the energy in complex space, transforming Belzebuth's complex space ability into a defensive measure as stout as absolute defense from Uriel, Lord of Vows. Velgryn's surprise was understandable. Rimuru responded defiantly to Velgrynd's shock, not wanting her to realize it was mostly Ciel's doing. Ciel, now able to communicate more smoothly with Rimuru, even used conversation as a weapon against Velgrynd. "You have to be kidding me. You consumed it. You simply ate up Cardinal Acceleration, my greatest ability?" Velgrynd was too stunned to move, a fatal error, even if just for a moment. "So I'm sorry to bother you while you're still shocked that your amazing attack was a dud. But you didn't forget that we're in a fight here, right?" Rimuru taunted. It was already too late for Velgrynd by the time Rimuru spoke. Ciel, unerring in its actions, had Rimuru's full backing. Calculation of Velgrynd's magicule count complete. After accounting for the subject's nature and characteristics, I determined it is possible to encase the target in insulated imprisonment for several hundred seconds. Activating. Before Velgrynd realized it, a layered magic circle surrounded her. This compound skill, combining Uriel's unlimited imprisonment with spatial insulation, was crafted exclusively for use against Velgrynd. Now she was trapped within it. Ciel had fully computed the combat airspace, taking into account temperature, humidity, gravity, wind currents, sunlight, and the pulses of every living thing. No matter what Velgrynd did, she couldn't escape. The blinding light of the insulated imprisonment made Velgrynd dizzy. How could it be so easy for him? The dragon's crimson body trembled in humiliation. Despite her efforts, the imprisonment never wavered. "Okay, sit tight in there for a while, okay? I'll play with you after I free Veldora," Rimuru said, marking Velgrynd's defeat. "All right, I'll admit defeat this time, but I still have parallel existence. And whether this is insulated imprisonment or not, I can just trace a soul corridor out of here." Velgrynd had one more move. It meant giving up her current body, but she could channel her remaining energy into the replication next to Ludora. It was humiliating, but not the end for her yet. Slowly, cautiously, she began transferring magicules through her soul corridor, unaware that this was exactly what Ciel wanted. Rimuru couldn't help but admire Ciel's remarkable transformation. Naming it on a whim seemed to have boosted its performance significantly, turning its previous machine-like reactions into more human-like interactions. Ciel, now in such great shape, had taken their battles to a whole new level. Even Velgrynd, who once seemed overwhelming, was no match for Ciel's strategic brilliance. Ciel's suggestion to have Velgrynd exhaust her magicule count before trapping her in an insulated imprisonment was a masterstroke. The synergy between Rimuru's abilities and Velgrynd's reactions made the plan work seamlessly. Despite being outclassed in magicule count, Ciel built an efficient imprisonment tailored to their advantage, ensuring a decisive victory. The crux of the operation lay in Rimuru's ability to withstand Velgrynd's attack. Trusting Ciel's computations, Rimuru delegated Velgrynd's handling to it while he focused on Veldora. Ciel's flawless execution exceeded Rimuru's expectations, using his abilities more skillfully than he ever could. "That's my partner for you," Rimuru thought, now more impressed with Ciel than ever. Thanks to an unexpected boon, Ciel had become more dependable than ever. However, Rimuru couldn't lose sight of his objective. Freeing Veldora's mind before Velgrynd made another move, he wondered how long they could hold her back. Ciel responded confidently, explaining that even if Velgrynd went on a violent rampage, the insulated imprisonment would hold for a total of 200 more seconds. Despite Velgrynd being a major threat, Ciel reassured Rimuru that they didn't need to worry too much. Ciel had predicted Velgrynd's escape attempt, knowing she could use a soul corridor to transfer energy away from her. Rimuru realized that if any replication could be made into Velgrynd's real body, there was no major need to force her way out of the imprisonment. Ciel had created a loophole for Velgrynd to exploit, monitoring her use of parallel existence against the three Demonesses and Veldora. Velgrynd's parallel existence couldn't produce an inexhaustible supply of clones. Ciel had measured her magicule count to determine the maximum amount she could hold. With this information, they knew how many more replications they needed to overcome. Ciel predicted that Velgrynd had an insurance policy, baiting her into escaping into it. Despite his replications lacking ultimate skills, Rimuru acknowledged the effectiveness of Ciel's strategy. Parallel existence was useful as a decoy, or against weaker opponents, but not against those of equal or higher rank. Ciel had exposed this weakness, impressing Rimuru with its predictive abilities. Ciel's progress was exasperatingly impressive, but Rimuru was determined to stay focused. With Velgrynd conquered, Rimuru prepared to free Veldora's mind. All right, but just in case, I'm going to put all my power up against Veldora right now so I can be assured to wrap up in under 200 seconds. Give me a hand, Ciel. As you wish. Rimuru and Ciel squared up against Veldora, their primary mission. Ciel had earned precious time for them, not much, but enough. Determined to make the most of it, Rimuru resumed his attack on Veldora. Rimuru's objectives were clear: release Veldora and defeat Ludora. Despite the surprise of Ciel's birth, which had restored his calmness, his anger remained, reserved for Emperor Ludora. First, he had to approach Veldora. Rimuru tried to talk to Veldora, understanding that controlling a true dragon with such immense energy required extraordinary effort. Subjugation methods varied, from charm-based to coercion-based to total domination. Veldora's situation seemed coercion-based, similar to Kigali's, who had no free will left. Despite attempts to reach Veldora, his resistance was fierce. Veldora's orders seemed to be to eliminate Rimuru, attacking with ferocity. Even with Ciel handling Velgrynd, Veldora proved to be a tough match. Rimuru could cancel out Veldora's moves using storm-type skills, but maintaining this defense was exhausting. Realizing the challenge, Rimuru entrusted defense to Ciel. The tricky control probability ability was something he trusted Ciel to manage. As he moved closer to Veldora, the gales of wind around him felt calm, like the eye of a hurricane. Ciel efficiently offset Veldora's attacks, keeping Rimuru in good shape. Ciel explained that the demons serving Rimuru had been sending food chain-based support through their soul corridors, which strengthened him. Acknowledging this, Rimuru felt the combined strength of his allies, helping him hold his own against Veldora. Now that Rimuru was aware of the support he was receiving from his allies through the food chain, he felt more confident. He finally reached a spot right in front of Veldora and took the opportunity to call out to him. "Sorry to keep you, Veldora. Do you recognize me?" There was no reply, only a thunderstorm roar from Veldora. Irritated, Rimuru lashed out with his fist, but it didn't stop Veldora. Realizing that physical attacks alone wouldn't be enough, Rimuru decided to give Veldora a good beating to wake him up, not kill him. He continued to punch and kick Veldora, who only roared in response. Ciel suggested, "What do you think about using predation on Veldora and locking him in your complex space?" Rimuru found the suggestion frightening, but considered it. He asked if it was possible, to which Ciel confidently replied that it could immediately put it into action using Belzebuth. Reflecting on how Belzebuth, Lord of Gluttony, originated from the species-specific slime skill predation, Rimuru realized it was perfectly suited to him. Now optimized by Ciel, Belzebuth could be invoked from any part of his body, gaining more power the closer he was to the target. With Rimuru in point-blank range of Veldora, he expected serious performance. Rimuru made up his mind. "Thanks for causing me all this damn trouble, Veldora. Quit making me worry about you all the time." As Rimuru shouted, he immediately tried devouring Veldora via Belzebuth. But then, a familiar voice echoed in his mind. "Qua ha 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 ha, just a little mistake on my part, forgive me." "Veldora, right?" Rimuru asked. "Indeed, it is I, Veldora the Storm Dragon, your erstwhile ally." It couldn't have been a trap. The carefree, thoughtless tone confirmed it was truly Veldora. "Hey, so you're conscious?" Rimuru inquired. "Yes, actually I detached my core as quickly as I could. I cannot physically speak, but I still have my wits about me." Relieved that Veldora was safe, Rimuru was now angry for other reasons. "So what are you waiting for then? Regain control of your body. Despite all his worry, Veldora seemed unfazed, treating the situation casually. Rimuru felt justified in complaining. I would have done that long ago if I could. But listen to me, Rimuru. Don't you think you should calm down a bit and be a bit more careful? Veldora suggested. Shut up. If I was going to be calm about this, I wouldn't have done something as crazy as take on 2 true dragons at once, Rimuru retorted. Calmer now. Rimuru was somewhat impressed he had survived, but there was no room for caution when dealing with true dragons. As he mulled this over, Veldora continued to give cheerful advice. Oh, watch out for this. I'm about to break out some dark lightning. Stop providing color commentary like a sports broadcast. Even worse, Veldora didn't launch dark lightning at all. It was death-calling wind instead. Ciel cancelled it out, and Rimuru could have dodged it anyway, but he was frustrated by the misleading advice.